Becoming a successful professional speaker is a journey. How do you find that first stage, the next stage, and then the bigger and better stages? I'm Lee Hayes, your host. My co-hosts and I are here to guide you to a more successful speaking career. You're listening to Path to the Main Stage podcast. And welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to talk about another way to be successful as a speaker. There are many ways to be successful in the world of professional speaking, and we've talked about some of those before. You can be an inspiration, you can be a motivator, you can be a teacher, but something you can be is the life of the party. You can be the MC, you can be the person who brings the energy and holds the whole event together. Today, I'm bringing you Rob Ferre, who is the energy behind the party. He brings it, he holds events together, among many other talents, but that's the one we're going to talk about. So, Rob is an MC, a keynote speaker, a game show host, a DJ. He does it all. Let's hear some more. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hello, thank you, Lee, and I'm excited to be your co-host today for your amazing audience. And it's interesting, I don't know if you know this, but the name of my entertainment company is called Life of the Party Entertainment. I don't know if you got that, but you just kind of said, hey, he's the life of the party. So it's all congruent.
All right.
And as a speaker, I actually have, this is just the minutia of it. I recently just filed for a DBA, doing business as Rob Ferre Enterprises. And so I can separate the two brands because sometimes when my invoices show up on my client's ticket, it says life of the party. But I want to separate that. Like, oh yeah, yes, he is the life of the party. But that's so funny that you said that. So I'm so excited to be joining you here today and speaking to your audience.
Well, thank you so much. And you make a good point about separating your brands. Everybody can take a quick note there that if you have distinctly different brands, you do different things, for goodness, break them up. Nobody charges you extra for a DBA. You get to just tell the bank, I'm bringing you a different check, different name on the check. And they go, okay. So it's easy enough to do. You don't have to open a new company, right? You just add the line. So let's dig back a little bit here, Rob. How did you get started in both arenas? So you are a keynote speaker, but you do all these other entertaining aspects to events. Where'd you get started?
Well, it's funny how you say, where did you get started? I've been speaking all my life. A lot of people speak all their life, but I've been entertaining audiences. I've been in stages all my life. I did theater when I was in elementary school, middle school, college. I did improv. I went to school to be a broadcast TV reporter. I wanted to get into sports. I wanted to actually work for ESPN. And so when I graduated from college, I moved down to Walt Disney World because Orlando was supposed to be Hollywood on the East Coast. That didn't really work out, but I thought maybe I should go work for the Mouse and maybe that would be my foot in the door with ESPN. That did not happen. I actually moved into entertainment. So I worked at Magic Kingdom as a Jungle Cruise skipper. If you've ever been to Magic Kingdom,
Sure.
that's one of the rides I worked on. And then I also worked at the Haunted Mansion.
Oh my goodness, those are two of my favorite things. That's probably where I met you in another life.
Yeah, and that was actually like 20 years ago. So that would have been awesome if you actually were on one of my boats back in the day.
It's
And,
possible.
And then I moved into DJing because I met my mentor at the time, Elliot Hansen, who saw me at a talent show at the end of my Walt Disney World college program. And he said, have you ever thought about becoming an interactive theme park DJ? And I thought to myself, that's a job? And so he brought me in and I started working in theme parks, DJing inside of a theme parks like Universal, Disney. And then I also worked as a game show host at the Nickelodeon Hotel. So I was there for 3 years where I got my MFA, Masters of Family and Entertainment, MFE, Masters of Family Entertainment, which is a degree I made up. And then I moved back to Salt Lake City, Utah. So this is where I'm from. And I started my entertainment business, Life of the Party. Fast forward a couple of years after a couple of MC events where I did charity events. I started speaking at elementary schools. I joined NSA in 2015 because I wanted to expand what I do. And when I found out that there was this club of fellow speakers, it immediately ignited me. And so if we're going to go back to the origins, it was me entertaining in Orlando. But my first speaking engagement, other than me speaking on a tram, speaking on stages, I actually started doing elementary school red ribbon assemblies and assemblies that were around preventative. Um, the subject was like prevention, right? And so that's what I would do for those elementary schools. And then I started emceeing charity events, but I was emceeing weddings all along as well. And I took a lot of training from other DJs on how to be a better wedding MC. And then that translated into more corporate work. And then it really ramped up in 2015 once I started getting more active in the NSA communities. And then I had coaching. And that's kind of the origins of it all. And then it's evolved from there.
All right. So why don't we start then for the benefit of speakers with your 2015 experiences and go from there.
Yes.
So we can look more at the business arena.
Yes.
What is really the difference or the skill difference required between being an MC and being a keynote speaker? Because I think there's some overlap, but they're probably separate skills as well.
Yeah, and lots of different skills when it's involved between keynote speaking and MC work. Um, the thing that really helped me along the way is my improv training. I did a lot of theater training and then improv training. And improv works really well within the scope of MC work. I do a lot of crowd work. I interact and engage with the crowd, but I also bring gamification to my MC work. And that has evolved over the years because I take what I do as a game show host and I put it into my MC work. But the biggest difference, I think, is it's short little snippets where you always have to be prepared to walk on stage, introduce people, and engage that audience. But also the attention factor. It's really hard as an MC sometimes where you have to reel people in. They're maybe having conversations, and if you're in a big room with music, lights, a swell of music, people know things are about to start. But sometimes when you're in a smaller room, you're with a bunch of people who do sales, who like to chat and talk and network. That's another challenge. And so you have to learn all these different skill sets or tricks to bring people's attention back to the stage. So that's what's really important about MC work. Also, what's really important about MC work, it's not about you, it's about the people you're introducing, it's about the event. You are a conduit of what is happening on stage to the audience and getting them prepared for what's about to happen. That's the biggest difference. And then when it comes to keynote work, you are the star of the show or the hour, whatever it may be. People are there to see you for that moment. So there's that big difference. People don't necessarily go into a conference because of the MC, unless they're a celebrity. You got Mario Lopez. Oh, well, now that's going to be great. I'm going to go see him, but I'm nobody. But if I can be that person who can connect the audience to each other, to the messages on stage, I've done my job. And my approach to MC work is very different. And there are so many different types of MCs out there. There's MCs who moderate. They are content weavers. I am one that is constantly embedded into the event. I don't just go on stage, peace out. I will go to some of the parties, the networking events. When I was in Bangkok earlier this year, I was going to those parties and I was filming them. I actually made a recap video. I would do man on the street interviews. I would do games as people were coming into the room because some of those games really helped get the audience engaged before we had to introduce the keynote speaker. So sometimes about 5 minutes before we're supposed to get the program started, I go on stage, I get people's attention, and people go, oh, I need to start paying attention, or I'll slowly die down with my conversations in time for the keynote speaker. And so I usually have to get out of my head and think to myself, why aren't they paying attention? What's going on here? But there's also different tactics to grab their attention. So
Yeah, so can I
in a
just jump
nutshell,
on, if we can break those down? You had talked about crowd work, right? You do quote unquote
yes,
crowd work. Can you just describe
yes,
that a little bit more? What does that mean and how do you
yes.
do it?
So with crowd work, there's different ways to approach it. Going off the stage and out into the audience. Depending on the size of the room, the scope of the event, that's very possible, right? But if you have a big production team and they need to bring up the house lights and they have to have the camera on you, they need to know that's about to happen. But some of the crowd work that I do is I will step out into the audience, I'll interview people, I'll play a game with them, turn on a song, name that tune, tell me that song, here's a prize, thanks for playing. People perk up and now they're a part of the show. I want people to feel like they're a part of this experience from the front of the room to the back of the room. Also, a bit of crowd work is very simple. Things like if this is your first time, please stand up. Let's honor these people who are here today. Everybody, please welcome these people to this experience and let them feel like they're a part of this community. Because that is a thread for me, connected community. And this is something that I landed on a couple of years ago with my business coach. And he said, there is a thread in everything that you do, from game shows to DJing to keynotes to MC work. You're connecting audiences to each other. You're connecting audiences to the dance floor. You're connecting audiences through collaboration. And so this is something that is the thread of what I do, is connection.
And so when does the connection start? So obviously when you're on stage, there's crowd work going on. What kind of prep work do you do beforehand, specifically with the audience? Do you come early? Do you research? Like, what kind of prep work do you have to do regarding the audience?
Well, one of the most important things for me is understanding who the audience is from the planners that I work with. Tell me the demographics, the age group, what you've done in the past, and what has worked, what doesn't work. And those are the type of questions I like to ask in advance. And then I ask for permission. Can we put this engagement piece inside of the MC role? And I often don't use the word games because sometimes planners, even audiences, have an aversion to the word games. Well, I don't want to play a game. I don't want to win. I don't want to lose. Well, actually, people like to win, but they don't like to lose, or they don't like to be put in the spotlight without having prior knowledge to what the game is going to be. So I call them connection activities. And one of the best ways to engage an audience is also to understand, are there going to be round tables? Are they going to be theater style? Or is it going to be classroom style? That also dictates some of the ways I do the games. So if we have round tables, this is a perfect opportunity for me to put up a countdown clock. You have 2 minutes to discuss with your table these 3 things. You're going to go around. What's your favorite vacation destination? What's a bucket list thing that you want to do before you kick the bucket? Things like that. And I ask questions so audience members get to know each other. But the most important thing is the why and the reason behind it. And I don't just do games or activities for fun. I want to make sure that there's a purpose behind it. And maybe that purpose is to get people's attention, to help people feel connected to what's about to happen. And so as a keynote speaker, I also involve my message as an MC. And so, hey, we're just going to bring you as an MC. What I often ask, can I take the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and do a message to help lift up, raise up, set intention for this event? And I often use the first 15 minutes of my keynote, and it fits in perfectly. And then I do some of those activities and I do some of those things to help the audience be prepared for what's about to happen, setting intentions. But I also work with the planners and I make sure that this is a piece that we can do. One other thing that I also do video beforehand. I do a really fun engagement piece where I show video up onto the screen, me running into the event. I have the person who introduces me, calls me on the phone. I'm on the screen. They said, Rob, where are you? I'm like, I'm in my hotel room. We're starting right now. Okay, I'll be there in a minute. And there are times where I've been international audiences. I'll just give you like one of my favorite ones that I did recently. I was in Italy right before the conference and I filmed a series of videos. And in the script, I have the person who introduces me, they say, "Hey, Rob, where are you?" I said, "Well, remind me where the conference is." "Tucson." And I said, "Oh, so not Tuscany." He said, "No, not Tuscany, Tucson." "Okay, I'll be there instantly." Right? And so I'm in Tuscany, Italy. How do I get there? And it shows that I record this whole montage of me running onto the airplane, running to the resort, and then showing up. And it works really well. And this is one of the things that I do to engage an audience, to bring them in and let them know, oh, this guy's going to be fun. And it's just a way to elevate the event.
That is really a fun intro because I'm thinking of sort of the typical intro video I see when
Mhm.
various people on TV or in news or whatever say the person's name over and over and over again, and they show all their books and they say that they're fabulous, wonderful speaker, terrific, and then ta-da, here they are. To show a journey on screen, that's wildly unique. I was just thinking about that going, that is so fun and interesting. So the tip there really is, right, to come up with something that's gonna surprise and delight the audience, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. And I've been inspired by other speakers. One of the people that I've been inspired by who's helped me along the way is another friend and mentor is John Petz. And he does something very similar, and I took my own spin on it. I also got a little bit of that idea from Conan O'Brien. And so using my creativity and inspiration from others, I was able to create my own fun, unique way to step into an audience. And it's gone over quite well, and that has evolved over the years. Like, we have to learn, we have to do the gigs, and when the stakes aren't super high, and I mean things like elementary schools, they have a little give you a little bit more grace. They don't expect a whole lot, and so if I can test some of that material with other audiences, but, I don't do elementary school events anymore, but that's where I cut my teeth, and that's where I had to learn how to get the attention of these kids and keep them captivated. And so oftentimes it was a lot of activities mixed it was messages mixed with activities.
I wonder where speakers can cut their teeth now. Maybe that's when you do these Rotary events or community events where,
Sure.
quite frankly, you're not getting the big bucks, and I think it's fair that if you test something new and it doesn't hit 100%, well, guys, you really weren't paying me anyway. So you still bring your A game, even if your A slides off a little bit to see what's gonna work in the big arena. Is that fair?
It's fair, but also I don't wanna give people the impression like, "Oh, I'm gonna test this out, and if it fails," right? But I understand that's where I tell people even to get started and to test it out and be prepared, practice, and then see if it lands, right? This is a good place to practice. Um, I've also done these type of things with my own NSA chapter. Um, I was a past president. I've presented for our chapter multiple times. And these are opportunities for you to get on stage, to get video. And so I often said, people often ask me, how do I get started as an MC? Well, find your favorite charity, local charity, ask them if they're doing an annual gala, annual event, and go volunteer and say, I'm going to waive my fee. I tell people never to work for free, but you're going to waive your fee. You send them a contract, you cross out the number, and you say, I'm waiving my fee in exchange for these things: introductions to some of the people in the audience, 2 photos and videos. And if they're down with that, then you're in a good spot, because that's a great way for you to get started. And that's how I started, was starting to film and starting to get video and photo assets from those events that I could start putting in my MC reel.
And now what are some of the challenges that you've discovered as an MC? Because I'm sure if somebody's starting out, something's gonna happen and they don't know how to handle it. What are sort of issues that come along the way that MCs need to be able to handle? For example, you're doing an award ceremony and they can't find the award for the person, something's missing, or say the person doesn't come on stage. That's happened, right? And the next award goes to Joe Smith, and there's no Joe Smith. How do you handle little hiccups when you're the MC?
So there's multiple ways to approach those specific issues that you just mentioned. One of the biggest issues to kind of go back is actually getting the gig. There's not people don't immediately think about hiring an external professional MC for events. My fellow MCs, we're constantly creating our own space. We're creating that demand. Here in the United States, it's not often valued, and sometimes they'll bring in somebody internal, right? And so how do we have to frame it for our potential clients? That's challenge number one. Challenge number two that you talked about, how do I fill the space and time when things go wrong? That's where improv work comes in for me. Having things, bits, even stories to tell on stage. But that's often the time when I do crowd work. But let's say Joe doesn't show up. Great, we're just going to move on. On behalf of Joe, I accept this award. And then I step out into the middle of the stage and I take a photo and I smile, they laugh, right? I turn it into a moment. That's how I approach it. If that were to happen to me, somebody say, hey, Joe's not here. Oh, I just found out Joe's not here. I'm going to be taking this award on behalf of Joe, posing, things like that. And I just infuse my personality into that moment. And we have a little bit of a laugh and we move on. So that's how I would handle that moment.
So you're always prepared with little stories, with improv. I love the idea of improv. So I'm going to veer off a little bit. Where did you train in improv? How did you get that experience?
So I started doing improv in college, and then there is a local team here in Utah. There's lots of different improv teams here in Salt Lake City. And so I get involved with them. I go to workshops, I play with them. And that's just a way to work the muscles in my brain to be in the moment and find ways to go yes and, or to create something that was unscripted, if that makes sense. And so we just need to be a different version of ourselves or find a way that we would approach that situation. And so it's not very often things go awry, but there are times where I just have to move on and instead of trying to salvage the moment or the bit, I just move on. And sometimes, here's the most important thing to remember, the audience oftentimes doesn't know what went wrong. So don't let them know, right? And if I find out right now, yeah, Joe's in the bathroom. Okay, I'll give you an example. This is actually a great moment. We're going to go back to Bangkok. It was the awards, right? I emceed all 3 days, and then we did the awards on the last night. And we're presenting an award, and it's the first award of the night. Receiving the award is Graham. Everybody's applauding and cheering. Graham. And then his friend runs up, goes, Graham's my mate. He's from the UK. He's actually in the bathroom. Oh. So I actually let the audience know. So that was a great introduction. You guys reacted perfectly. Graham's actually in the bathroom. So when he comes out, we're going to do this all over again. That was perfect. That was the practice round. Let's try it again. And when he comes in, we're going to go wild. We're going to go crazy for Graham. And the winner is, and I started going through the whole thing again. I see him in the back, Graham! And everybody applauds and cheers. They stand up. And he knew in that moment that he had missed his moment, but we did it again. So it's thinking on your feet instead of going, oh, well, this sucks. Well, we'll move on. We'll give it to him later. I wanted to keep the momentum of the energy of that moment. And so that's what I did. And so there was another moment at that same awards. I had so much fun with these folks. And this was the Association of Pet and Animal Transportation Association. And they had a Lifetime Achievement Award to somebody who couldn't be there. And we show the video of him speaking and him accepting the award on a video. And then one of his colleagues, he's from Brazil, he comes up to the podium and he goes, I have him on FaceTime. I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. So I grab it. I grab the phone and I grab a microphone and I put it right underneath the phone. And he did an acceptance speech from his phone and everybody could hear it. This is what we call yes and in the improv world. Sometimes those moments happen. You're like, I don't know if we can go there, but I had so much, I would say, trust with the audience. They trusted me, and I knew that this moment could be enhanced if I put this guy in the spotlight. And it was a wonderful moment that he got to say hello and thank you from Brazil live on FaceTime. Nobody told me that was going to happen, but that's one of the first rules of improv is yes and I yes and that moment, and it turned into a beautiful moment for everybody.
You're giving so many great tips and things that I hadn't thought about, and one of the things you just said was trust. The audience has to trust you.
Mhm.
What are some ways that you build that trust? Obviously, trust builds over time, right? They see you on the stage all day. Obviously, this is the guy in charge. But when you first come out, are there any do you talk about yourself? Is it your mannerisms? What would make me trust you, Rob, when you walked into a room? Like what makes others you trust others? What are some things people can work on to be trustworthy?
So we're gonna go back to Bangkok because this is one of the more recent events that I did, and I'll tell you how one of the first ways to gain trust is one through the people that you work with, the planners, the people on this who are scheduling it, and then also gaining trust of the people on the AV team, going and rehearsing, testing your mic. This all gives you confidence and also trust with the people that you work with and understanding the audience. And so I did go to a practice session, a speaker get together before we started the conference. And then that night we had a mixer. I go to the mixer and I get to know people. I get to know the demographics. And what was interesting is a lot of those people are seeing each other for the first time in a year, but there were a lot of people who were new. And what I did is I actually hung around and talked to the new members and the first timers, and I got to know them. And I'm a first timer myself, and so I gained trust with them. I learned their stories, and those are some of the people that I lean on as well when I get on the microphone. And then I also got to meet some of the people who've been there years, and I got to know them a little bit better. Once I understood the personalities in the room, I wanted to elevate the room about 2 notches above. And that's usually how I do it. If the room's at a 5, I'm at a 7. If the room's at a 3, I'm at a 5. I don't want to alienate an audience by coming out and being obnoxious and be like, "Hey, everybody, put your hands up in the air. I said, put your hands up in the air." And I observe this all the time. And it's a concept called metacognition. And this is something I learned from another speaker who taught me about this. This has been a concept been around for years, but it's thinking about your thoughts. Have you ever been in an audience where an MC said this? "Good morning, everyone."
God, I know what you're gonna say.
Good morning.
I
Hey, you're already
hate
cringing.
that. You're getting anybody who's not watching this on video, major cringe. Rob started to say hello, everybody, and I'm going, ah, here it comes, because so many people do that, and it's awful. Thank you for that example. Sorry, continue.
But why is it awful? Because I am now insulting you.
Yes,
Challenging my audience. I am fighting with you. My friend Pat Dwyer, who you should have on this podcast as well.
who I actually have
told me-
recorded. Everybody watch that episode. Continue.
Pat's been on? Okay, perfect. So Pat's brilliant.
He's cute. He's
is-
cute, everyone.
Okay. Pat taught me this concept. He said, "You are now challenging your audience to fight." And I'm like, "You're right." Because he also comes from the world of improv. He actually has come and seen me speak and MC, and he's given me all these things, all these tips, and he's coached me. And he said, when you say this or that, you're now challenging your audience to fight. So that's one thing, is saying something like, "Oh, you can do better than that." You are now insulting your audience, saying that you're not good enough, you didn't cheer loud enough, and I need that, right? And also using the words I need you to get that out of your vocabulary. Use phrases like, "I invite you to," "let's," "we're going to." Now, back to trust. One of the main ways I gain trust with an audience is when I first step onto that stage. This is my approach. I disarm them with self-deprecating humor. I often have a slide, and I'll talk about I'll say it this way. let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. I bet the majority of you are thinking, how can they afford this low rent Ryan Seacrest? And then I show a picture of Ryan Seacrest, and then I start to show the different celebrity doppelgangers. And then I end with one, what often gets a good laugh. And now that I have disarmed them, they're often thinking, or at least this is what I assume they're thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. This guy doesn't take himself too seriously. I like that guy. Humor is the easiest way to bridge a gap with relationships and gain trust. And so I often use humor. And then now that I got their attention, I start going into the minutia of what we're going to do. And I also let them know whenever I get on stage, I'm here to introduce these people, to engage you. I don't say it necessarily that way, but they now trust me whenever I get on the mic. It's going to be something important. I'm not going to ramble on, and I'm going to give them information that is important to them.
Great information. And I want to jump now to helping the people. I mean, everything you're saying is helping the listeners. But what is a step or what are things you recommend when you're working with speakers? How do you become better?
Well, one, join a community of fellow speakers. I'm the kind of person who thrives with a community. I have a lot of friends who are speakers who have done it all on their own, which is great. But I think if you do well in a community, you can be elevated by those around you. I don't like being the smartest person in the room. So that's why I like being a part of the National Speakers Association. I like going to the national events. I've gone to international events, and I can always learn from other people. That's the most important thing. And what I often encourage speakers to do is watch other speakers. Don't take notes on the message primarily, but take notes on how they structured their speech, how they gained the trust of the audience, how they told stories. And every time a speaker makes you perk up, makes you think, but also makes you check out, once you start going towards your phone, think to yourself, why did I all of a sudden just check out? What did this person do that made me think, oh, well, I don't need to pay attention to this? Or why am I smiling right now? Why am I laughing? Why am I clapping? Why am I cheering? I often take notes when I'm watching other speakers about how they structured it and how they even did engagement activities. One of my favorite moments was being at Influence in Denver and watching Diana Kander, a fabulous speaker. And she did this game, and I think, oh, I know all about games. I do games all the time. And she did this game to set up a case study where she did name that tune, and she brought up two different hip hop artists, Vanilla Ice and Snoop Dogg. But she did a game to introduce her case studies of those two people. And then she went into how Snoop is still relevant and how Vanilla Ice
Is
kind of
vintage.
just vintage. Exactly. But those are the things I take notes on. Oh, she used an activity or a game to set up her case studies or examples. I like to call them the case studies, examples, and those are things that I take notes on. So that's one of the things that you could do. Another thing is actually pay for the right type of coaching. And I've gotten coaching from multiple people who are friends first. And I think if somebody just approaches you and says, take my coaching program, stop. My suggestion is find trusted individuals. And if they are doing what you want to be doing and they offer coaching, go for it. Because when you pay for coaching, that means you have an invested stake in them and they have an invested stake in you.
So tell me about a little more. You were talking about, oh my goodness, case studies. Sorry, little
Yes.
pause there. You were talking about
Yeah.
case studies and examples and games. Can you provide tips on how to do some of those things? And what I mean by that is an example of maybe a poorer way of doing it. I was watching someone speak and he said, okay, everyone's going to do this exercise. And he gave the exercise and he says, then I wait and I give them 3 minutes to do the exercise. And I was watching the energy disappear from the room because a few people didn't really get it. A few people got it. Like you had, say, groups of 2, you had some groups of 5. So some groups were done right away. And then so what I witnessed was he said, "All right, here's the activity, blah, blah, blah. So what we're gonna do." And then he went and he took a drink of water and he was standing, he's looking at the clock. And I watched the noise first diminish because people ran out of activity. And then the noise came back up because now it was just idle chatter. And then he had to bring them back. Is there a good way to do exercises or games that you can control that energy level in the room or not lose everyone in the room? And I know that's a very broad question, but I've got faith in you, Rob.
So let's talk about your specific example. I think um, when it comes to these type of engagement activities where you want to do a roundtable discussion, I often put everything up onto a slide. I will give them instructions and I will leave those instructions on the screen. So step 1, you're going to do this. Step 2, you're going to do this. And step 3, I'm going to put 3 minutes on the board. And then if you have extra time, I encourage you to do this, right? And then as I have the countdown clock on the screen, I will vocally start counting down. Okay, we have 2 minutes to go. 1 minute, everybody. 30 seconds. Okay, let's wrap up those conversations in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead. And then sometimes people are still chatting and talking. Oh, I see there's some great collaboration going. I'm actually going to come out there. And then people are like, oh, wait, ooh, that could be. But you got to know your audience if you can go out there and start asking them questions. But maybe he didn't ask the right question. He didn't set it up. But also, this is really important, is people don't know where to start sometimes. And so I give them a prompt. Okay, we're going to be discussing this. And you're going to start with the person who is this. And so I can do something to the effect of, so whoever's been at who's ever come to this conference the most, that person is going to start, right? The person who got a haircut most recently, we're going to start with them. Whoever's celebrating a birthday, whatever it may be. But those activities and discussions, the more specific, the more rules, and even the visuals, because I often see people like, what are we supposed to talk about again? And so they look up at the screen, right? And then maybe if you're looking at people who are confused, not engaged, maybe there's 3 people at a table and they've figured it out, go sit down with them and talk to them and maybe use them as an example. So I was sitting at this other table and I was listening to their conversation and I observed this. And, actually, Lee, could you tell us? No. Well, I'll do it for you, right? Oh, yeah. I'll go over to you, hand you the mic, you tell me the thing, right? So there's ways to engage the audience. But actually, what he did when he took a drink of water, I do that as well. If I need a moment to kind of look at my notes, I'll drink some water, but then I am constantly vigilant of the audience. And so I have done activities where I'm in the audience interviewing people and I've lost them. So one thing that I also have learned is if it's a big room, have a mic runner. I'm going to send Lee over there. Lee, let's go to table number 9. They have their hands up. And then focus is still on me and I haven't lost the audience, because there were times where I was doing those engagement activities or asking questions to the audience and they would respond. Other tables started engaging and they weren't paying attention because I was off the stage and the focal point was gone. So keeping their attention is everything.
That is amazing. I want to jump now to pricing, because I know that's a question that's sitting in everybody's head. They always say, Lee, how much? You do both, which I think gives you such a great viewpoint on this. When you are a keynote versus when you are MCing, can you compare pricing there versus, not the dollars, because everyone's at different dollars. But if I charge X for an MC, or this is sort of where MCs fall, this might be where a keynote falls. How do those relate to each other, or do they even?
The reality behind it is budgets. Sometimes they'll budget for an MC. Sometimes they'll just say, how much do you charge? It's a case-by-case basis. I'll tell them what my day rate is, and then if it's a multi-day event, I'll give them a break on it. I'll say, yes, if you're going to book me for multiple dates, I will charge you this much. So my day rate is 10,000, for example, right? Well, we need you for 3 days. So is that 30 grand? We can't afford that. No, that's fine. What does day 1 look like? What does day 2 look like, right? Oh, it's a half day. Because there are days where I've done multi-day events where I've gone on the mic 3 or 4 times, but I'm still there for the day. But I understand everybody's budget is different. So I approach it on a case-by-case basis. And I often start with, this is my day rate. But if we're going to be doing multiple days, pricing can go down, right? Um, and the thing is, people often put more money into the keynote. So to me, it's a case by case basis.
Okay. Do you ever keynote, or somebody's asking you to keynote and you say, "Oh, and I also MC." Do you ever use it as an add-on? How do you do that?
Yes. So let's say they bring me into keynote and I have to understand the scope of the event, right? And where I'm also speaking in the event. Am I going to be an opening keynote? Am I going to be a closing keynote? How long's the event? Do I have time to be able to dedicate to multiple days? Do they have a budget for that? Do they have somebody internal? So it's just asking those right questions to kind of lead them to it. So I can upsell it. There have been day-long events where I've been an opening keynote and then I served as their MC. That I prefer. When I've done the opposite, it's a little bit more clunky, where you MC and then you get to introduce yourself as the closing keynote. So I have, through trial and error, figured out a winning strategy as a closing keynoter. And so it's taken years to kind of get to that point, but there are ways to upsell it and say, well, I'm already going to be there for the day. It would only be X more to bring me in to stick around and MC your entire day. I've also upsold entertainment in the evening. Hey, I can MC and I'll do your evening activities. Oh, yeah, we do an opening reception. Oh, bring me in, I'll DJ the night before, or I'll DJ that night, or I'll do my game show, or I'll MC your gala. Like I'm able to upsell and add value where I can.
You just gave a list of some things you do. I just wanna make sure I'm getting a complete list for everyone who's not an extended list for everyone who's listening. So you can MC, you can do the awards. You mentioned now this is obviously a separate skill, but you DJ, you do gaming and gamification. Um, am I missing anything there? Like, are there other aspects of MCing that, like, specific skills that others might have?
Well, I have there have been times where I've done smaller conferences and they don't have dedicated AV.
Oh, okay.
Gone in and actually have turned on on mixers and things like that. I basically a skill set is I find a way to be of value and insert myself to create a overall better event. And sometimes that is me trying to figure out, oh, how can I add value to this event by making sure that the AV works for the whole entire event. But also, I will like to meet every speaker before they go on stage, talk a little bit to them about what they're about to speak on. And as an MC, also, if there is not pre-vetted introductions and they just hand you a bio, you're also editing and writing and taking that and turning it into something that you can actually give quickly and precisely. Because sometimes you just get a bio and you're reading their bio for a minute. And so I approach those people and I say, are you okay with me editing this down to about 3 or 4 sentences? Because I think it's really important for everybody to hear from you instead of me reading your bio for a minute. Oh yeah, that's great. And then oftentimes I'll ask them a question where I do a little known fact or something that personalizes them. Because sometimes there are speakers who are expert speakers, but not necessarily professional keynote speakers, but they're within the industry and they've been given an hour or 45 minutes. I want to be that conduit of communication and attention and connection to that person. So before they go on stage, I'm our next keynote speaker. I'm so excited for you to meet. I was just talking to them backstage, and they told me about this, this, and that. And did you know that they're this? And little known fact. Let's welcome to the stage, Lee. Right, and everybody applauds and cheers.
So you're
'Cause-
building trust between the speaker and the audience already too. That sounds like part of your job, that you are, by giving these little facts, you're making the audience feel they know them.
Yeah. And so I've done events from small scale to large scale, right? And those large scale events, sometimes it's me just being prepared to go on stage when somebody finishes, everything's on prompter, my mic's ready to go. Then there are times where I'm backstage or I'm off to the side of the stage because there is no backstage, and I'm writing down notes and I'm making sure things are going on. And I say, is the buffet ready? Okay, I want to make sure the buffet's ready. Like, these are things that I think about, because if I'm going to give somebody the wrong information and tell people to go somewhere, then it's on me. So I am constantly being vigilant what's going on. So MC work is actually a lot harder than keynote work. But well, I would say they
More
both have
complex.
challenges and they both have a lot of work to get to it, because sometimes keynote work is people are doing all the research, all the prep beforehand as well.
Right, right. No, it does sound very complex being an MC professional. However, it also sounds very fun and interesting, and like a legitimate way that a speaker can be very successful. That's what they're good at. All right, Rob. Well, we are at time, but I have one last question for you, which I ask every one of my co-hosts, and that is, we're going to look back at 2015, Rob. So, if 2026 Rob was talking to 2015 Rob, what is the one piece of advice you would give him that you wish you knew then that would have helped you?
The most important thing is the systems and processes. Start documenting everything, keeping those connections, putting them into a CRM. Build your system and process. There might be people like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at that. I myself am not very good at that. I'm still working on it. And it's trying to get everything into one location and start having a repository of clients, people that you've worked with, and then keeping those relationships alive. And right now, I am putting everything into this new CRM, and now I'm having to reach out to past clients. And so if I could go back and say, okay, Rob, start documenting everything right now, have everything in one place so that you can go back and revisit that. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that I would tell myself,
That is
because I have that brain that doesn't work that way.
No, but that is a great piece of advice, because as you're learning, there is so much stuff you're getting that you're forgetting about. So I love that piece of advice. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Rob Ferre. Great advice on how to be an MC, or how to be the glue that holds everything together, to be the life of the party, and to make events better, because that might be the skill set you have, which takes you to the next level of speaking. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time. Becoming a successful professional speaker is a journey. How do you find that first stage, the next stage, and then the bigger and better stages? I'm Lee Hayes, your host. My co-hosts and I are here to guide you to a more successful speaking career. You're listening to Path to the Main Stage podcast.